When you're cooking a turkey for Thanksgiving, you want to make sure to defrost it a few days ahead of time. So if a 4 to 12 pound turkey, you need about 3 days, and then a 16 to 20 pound turkey, you need about 5 days. This is a really simple recipe. I will link it below. It is 1.5 cubes of salted butter, 2 teaspoons of chopped rosemary, a teaspoon of dried thyme, salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, and we're just going to turn this into a nice rub and mix it together. And we're going to coat our turkey with butter underneath the skin and on top of the skin. Then rub our herbs and spices all over it to give it lots of good flavor. You want to put your turkey in a roasting pan with a roasting rack, so make sure that you have a big enough one depending on the size of your turkey. Then I like to add around the sides of the turkey chopped celery, chopped carrots, maybe some shallots or onions, and then fresh thyme and rosemary, and get that into the oven. You're going to also put about a cup of broth down in there to help keep it moist, and preheat your oven to 325 degrees, which is the best temperature for roasting a turkey. But before you put it in the oven, you are going to cover it with a nice big piece of aluminum foil. That aluminum foil just protects that turkey from cooking too much on the outside before the inside is fully cooked. So halfway through your cooking time, you'll remove the foil and let it brown on the outside. And I do have a cooking chart with times and roasting times for all the different sizes of turkeys. This is a great moist turkey recipe. I hope you enjoy it, and I will link it below. There will be lots of juices at the bottom of your pan, which make great homemade gravy. And speaking of homemade gravy, let's move on to gravy, how to make gravy from scratch. Thanksgiving is the perfect time to make homemade gravy because you have all those pan drippings from the bottom of your turkey. In a small saucepan, you're going to melt 1/3 cup of butter, and you're going to let it cook in with 1/3 cup of all-purpose flour and make a roux with that. Whisk it together till it's nice and golden brown and bubbly. Then to that, you'll add 3 cups of broth or the turkey drippings from your turkey pan. To that, you'll add your herbs. I like sage, thyme, and mushroom powder. And you're going to continue whisking the whole time so that this doesn't get lumps as you're cooking it over a low simmer. And it will thicken because of the flour and butter combination, and it is the perfect flavor. Of course, you can salt and pepper it to taste, but this makes the perfect gravy, especially to go with your roasted turkey. On to green bean casserole. This is the best green bean casserole. I like to start with 6 cups of steamed fresh green beans. You can also use canned. 2 cups of cream of mushroom soup. Now I have the recipe for this cream of mushroom soup on the blog at farmhousehours.net. I will link it below. It is on the recipe with this green bean casserole. And then you're going to be adding ground black pepper, some heavy cream, some onion powder, and some crispy fried onions, which you can make yourself. It's also, the recipe for that is also included in the recipe for the green bean casserole. You give that a good stir and then pour it into a prepared 9x13 baking dish and top it with more of the crispy fried onions. You will also want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees. And once you get this all into your 9x13 casserole dish and you have the top covered with more of the crispy onions, you're going to bake it for 30 minutes until it's nice and hot throughout the whole dish, and then top it with more crispy onions to finish it off cook it for about 5 or 10 more minutes, and it's ready to serve. This is one of our favorites at the Thanksgiving table. And if there are any leftovers, I always hide them in the fridge for myself. Okay, for the stuffing, I did not like stuffing until I had my mother-in-law's stuffing, and this is her recipe. It is 6 cups of dried breadcrumbs. You can use your favorite kind, sourdough, white, wheat, whatever. Just make sure that they're very stale and dry and cubed. And then 3 cups of cooked brown turkey meat. So I like to roast my turkey and then make my stuffing with the brown turkey meat and just serve the sliced turkey breast for the dinner. You can also use sausage if you don't want to use brown turkey meat. And then 2 cups of chopped celery, 2 cups of diced onion. You're going to saute those in butter. You're going to use 2.5 cups of turkey broth or pan drippings from cooking your turkey, a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of onion powder, a teaspoon of dried thyme leaves, a teaspoon of rubbed sage, a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, and a 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. And you are going to mix these all together. Then you're going to drizzle over your 2.5 cups of turkey broth or pan drippings and a 1/2 cup of melted butter. Give that a really good stir and you're going to moisten all the breadcrumbs with those juices, and then pour it into your prepared 9x13 pan. Cover it with some foil. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees, and you're going to bake that about 30 minutes until it is heated all the way through. Remove your foil, let it brown on top, and it's ready to serve. This is a classic every year at our Thanksgiving table. And on to a creamy sweet potato casserole. Last year I shared our candied yams recipe. This year I am sharing the casserole, the marshmallow casserole, sweet potato casserole. So you're going to start with 6 to 8, depending on how much you want to make, medium-sized sweet potatoes. Get those poked and prepped and baked in the oven until they're soft all the way through. So that'll take about an hour, just depending on how big your sweet potatoes are. Then you're going to remove the skins or scoop the insides out of all the skins into a nice big mixing bowl. To that, you're going to add a 1/2 cup of unsalted butter, 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar, 1/4 cup of maple syrup, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and give it a good stir and mix it up really well with a hand mixer. I will also link this recipe below so that you do not have to remember all the measurements. You can just go print off the recipe card at farmhouseharvest.net. Once you get this all mixed up, you're going to pour it into a 9x13 pan and cover it with marshmallows. Now, for this, you can use large marshmallows or the mini marshmallows. We use both. Either way, you just want to make sure you cover the top of the potatoes with marshmallows, and then you bake it at 350 degrees till it's heated through and all the marshmallows are toasty brown on top and melted, covering your potatoes. This is a kid's favorite at Thanksgiving. We always like to do rolls during Thanksgiving, whether we do croissants or a sourdough roll. They're both delicious. Some people may be intimidated by croissants, but it's really a simple dough made of bread flour, salted butter, regular flour for rolling and shaping, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt, a little bit of instant yeast, and whole milk. And then you put your dough together. Of course, I will link this recipe in the description below so you can print it off. Then you're going to let your dough chill for about 30 minutes in the refrigerator. Make sure you cover it with plastic wrap so it doesn't dry out. After 30 minutes of chilling in the refrigerator, you're going to remove the dough from the refrigerator, turn it out onto a lightly floured baking mat or parchment paper, and then you are going to roll it into a 14-inch by 10-inch about size. I'm just telling you measurements at this time. Once you get used to this recipe, you do not have to use the same measurements. You'll be able to know what you're doing and make it really easily. Okay, this is the butter layer. So you are going to blend together butter with a little bit of flour, and that is going to get chilled in a smaller rectangle shape that will fit on top of the other rectangle dough that you already rolled out and chilled. So we're just putting the butter layer in the middle of the dough, folding the two sides over, and then rolling it together. You want to make sure that you're not rolling the butter out of the dough, so you want it to seal on the top and on the sides. Then you're going to do a tri-fold. So you lift the bottom up, lift the top over, and then you've got 3 different layers there. You're going to put that back into the refrigerator and chill it for another few minutes. Then roll that out into another rectangle and do a tri-fold again. This creates the layers in your croissants. After your last set of this, you're going to let this rest in the refrigerator for 4 hours or overnight. Then you'll roll it out and you can cut your triangles in the croissant shape. You'll roll each triangle up from the wide side to the skinny side, and then put those on a parchment lined baking sheet and let them proof on your counter. For the last time, it'll take about an hour. Then you're going to make a simple egg wash, spread that on top, preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and you will bake these croissants for 20 to 25 minutes until they're golden brown. And these are the perfect roll for Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, or any fancy occasion, or anytime you want a delicious croissant. On to the famous Libby's pumpkin roll. This is a tradition that has gone back for generations and a recipe that is famous. It's actually a pretty simple cake batter that you cook in a 10-inch jelly roll pan. The cake is a simple batter of flour, baking powder, baking soda, ground cinnamon, clove, salt, pepper, eggs, sugar, pumpkin puree, of course, a little bit of lemon juice. You mix the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients and then fold them together just until they're combined. And then you will pour that batter into a prepared jelly roll pan and spread it out evenly. I, of course, like to use parchment paper here. Preheat your oven to 375 and bake this for 13 to 15 minutes, just until the cake springs back when you touch the middle. While your cake is baking, you can make the delicious cream cheese filling, and you're going to do that by blending together 8 ounces of room temperature or softened cream cheese with a cup of powdered sugar, 4 tablespoons of soft butter, and a half a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Put a large kitchen towel on your kitchen counter, dust it really well with flour, and as soon as that cake comes out, remove it from the oven and immediately turn it out onto the prepared kitchen towel and carefully peel off your parchment paper and roll up that cake in that towel. And this helps it not break when you roll it up with the filling. And then you'll unroll it, fill it, roll it back up again, chill it for an hour, dust it with powdered sugar, and slice and serve. This is a recipe that everybody loves, and homemade pumpkin roll is so much better than store-bought. This apple pie recipe has been in my family for generations. It's made with a super flaky crust. It is an egg and vinegar pie crust, which is super flaky and delicious. It's really easy. It's 3 cups of all-purpose flour, a teaspoon of salt. You can add a tablespoon of brown sugar if you want. You don't have to. Then you use a cup and a half of butter, and you get that cut in really well. You are going to get a large egg, a tablespoon of vinegar, and about 6 tablespoons of cold water. Whisk that together in a bowl, add it to the flour mixture, and stir until you create a dough. And a lot of times you have to press it together to create your dough. Divide that in half, wrap them in plastic wrap, refrigerate them for at least 30 minutes, if not overnight. While that is refrigerating, you can prepare your apples. I like to use Granny Smith apples for this. I also love the Golden Delicious. I like to do half and half. And then you're going to slice those, peel those. You're going to at least 5 Granny Smiths, 3 Pink Lady, or your other favorite type. Get those sliced really good. You're going to add to that 3/4 cup of sugar. I also like to sprinkle my apples with about a tablespoon of lemon juice and a teaspoon of lemon zest. That helps add flavor and keeps the apples from turning brown. Of course, print this recipe off. I will link it below in the description at farmhouseharvest.net. You can just jump to the recipe and print it all off so you have exact measurements and how to make this, but it's super easy to make and baked with the fresh apples so that they are not mushy when it is finished, but the flake is super crusty. The filling is not runny, and it is just a perfect apple pie. You can spread cream or milk or butter over the top of this pie crust and then dust it with sugar or cinnamon sugar in this case. And it makes a beautiful finish. You bake it at 375 for about 45 minutes to 55 minutes until it's golden brown on top and cooked through, and enjoy this flaky apple pie. On to pecan pie. This is definitely an annual tradition here. We love our pecan pie. I like making it with real maple syrup instead of Caro syrup because Caro syrup is just so bad for you. So I like the flavor of the real maple syrup too. It's another pie crust recipe, super simple, just like the apple pie crust recipe, but the filling is made with pecans. So you make your pie crust, put it in your pie pan. Of course, it's just the bottom. You don't bake it. Then you're going to make your filling. It's 2 1/4 cup of whole pecans, 3 eggs, 2 tablespoons of flour, a half a teaspoon of salt, 1/3 cup of melted butter, half a cup of brown sugar, and 1 cup of pure maple syrup. First, you put your pecans into the bottom of the pie crust, and then you beat together the rest of the ingredients, especially until the eggs are completely blended in and whisked in with the maple syrup, the sugars, and the other ingredients. And then you pour that over the top of the pecans inside your pie crust. It's actually one of the easiest pies to make. You'll preheat your oven to 375 degrees. You're going to roll out your crust, of course, get your filling all in there. I like to wrap the edges of this pecan pie with aluminum foil. So I get a 3-foot piece of aluminum foil that's about 2 inches wide and wrap it around the edge of the pie. And this keeps the pie crust on the edges from burning, prevents it from burning, so that the center of the pie can cook really well before it gets nice and browned. I am now making the filling for this pecan pie. So it's really simple. You just add maple syrup, sugar, melted butter, salt, flour, and eggs to a large mixing bowl. Don't use a wooden spoon, use an electric mixer, or you can do that in the blender and make sure it's blended together really well. Then pour the filling over the top. You can, of course, fold the edges of this pie crust if you want to make it pretty. I like to wrap it, as I'm showing you, with aluminum foil here just to prevent it from burning on the crusts. And then remove that foil halfway through, and it just makes a delicious pecan pie with a ooey gooey caramely center, and everybody loves this recipe. These recipes are linked below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.